Hi everyone. In this video, I'm going to be doing a little Floetrol experiment. I'm going to be testing the US Floetrol against the Aussie Floetrol. I'll be testing out both the Floetrols with a line pour and a silicone cell pour. I've only ever used the US Floetrol, but I've heard amazing things about the Aussie version. I finally got my hands on it, so I'm excited to experiment. I'm actually hoping I will like the US better because the Aussie is very expensive in Canada. That little container was more than that huge gallon. But let's get started and I will rate and compare at the end. So I'm starting off with the US Floetrol and we're going to do a silicone cell pour. I have all my mixtures here, base layer, 5 different colors, and it's all mixed about half acrylic paint, half Floetrol, and a bit of water. And I've added just 1 drop of silicone oil to each of the 5 colors. Jumping right into the final results here, I'll show the entire pour with the Aussie Floetrol since I've used this US one in so many of my videos before. We're jumping right in to the finished look. It's still wet here, but the colors look great, the cells look amazing, and I'll compare both final dried pieces at the end of the video. Moving on to the Aussie Floetrol silicone cell pour. So it's my first time using this. I was actually worried that it wasn't the Aussie Floetrol at first because it doesn't say anywhere on the front. But when I flipped it around, I looked at the address in New South Wales. It's in Australia, so I think this is the right stuff. I've already mixed my base layer and 4 of the acrylic paint mixture colors. And I noticed after mixing, there's quite a bit of bubbles on top, but we'll see if they will torch out easily. So I'll just do a quick torch on the top, and they immediately go away. So that's a good sign. Now I'm just going to mix up the last of the 5 acrylic paint mixtures. I have about 1 ounce of the Floetrol in this 3-ounce cup. Off the bat, I've noticed that the Aussie Floetrol is a lot less transparent and thinner as well. So I'm going to start by adding some of the black paint here. And I'm using the same color palette as the US Floetrol test, so we'll really be able to see the difference. Normally I would add water in right here, but since it is more liquid, I'm going to see if it even needs water. So I'll do a little consistency check. And it's already ready to go. It's a perfect consistency. So unlike the US version, the Aussie Floetrol does not need any water. Colors are all mixed and ready to go. Now it's time to add in some silicone oil. I have my paint covered Mart 100% silicone oil, and I'm going to add just 1 drop to each of the 5 acrylic paint mixtures. I'm not adding any to the base. And I'd like to create some bigger cells, so I'm not mixing it in heavily, just tapping it down in each color. And that will do it. It's tempting to mix it in heavily, but you'll get tiny little baby cells. So I want some big cells here, so just lightly tapped it in and we're ready to go. So I have my 12 by 12 square canvas, same size as the US one, and we will show the whole process this time. So to start, I'm taking some of the base layer and I'm just putting it in the center of the canvas. I have a cup I've cut the bottom off of, and I'm just going to press that down into the base layer. Now I can start to pour the acrylic paint mixtures. So I'm just doing 1 color at a time, not too much. I do want the colors to be spread out and not overwhelmingly in one section on the canvas. And I'm just going to start to layer all of the colors. And I like to layer the light colors right against the darkest colors so you do get a good contrast. Now I'm just going to take the base layer, spread it around the canvas here, and use my glove to spread that out a little further. So now the the paint in the middle and the cup will have something to grip onto and glide nicely across. I do save a little bit of the base layer to use in the cut cup there because it's the lightest of the shades. It goes really well with the black and you can see some really defined cells. So I've saved a little bit of it, but the majority of it I just spread out there. Now we'll go back in and add our colors, put the remainder of the base, contrast that with a nice dark blue, and I'll keep layering. And I can see little tiny cells starting to form. My cup is tilting a bit, so I'm actually just gonna tip it a little bit so it goes more back into the center. So far it's looking very similar to the US Floetrol pour. The cells are looking almost the same, but we haven't spread them out yet. So that will be the real test. And as I was pouring here, I started to notice a few little chunks are coming out. So unfortunately, I must have not mixed some of the mixtures well enough. And I'm really hoping they'll be close to the edge of the canvas and I can pour them off, or this might ruin the entire piece. And we're getting dangerously close to the edge there, so I'm just gonna tilt it back, guide it into the center. So there we go, it is all poured. And unfortunately, my camera cut out when I lifted the cup and used a palette knife to spread out that middle. But I have shown that in previous videos, so we're jumping in right to spreading it across the canvas. And these cells are just gorgeous. Unfortunately, the few chunks that I saw when I was pouring weren't at the very edge. You can't really see them, but I had to pour off a lot of really beautiful cells to remove them, which is too bad. Still left with a lot of gorgeous cells, but the shapes aren't as good as they could be if I didn't have to pour so much of it off the edges. But now I know Aussie Floetrol with a few drops of silicone oil makes gorgeous cells, and I can't wait to try again and mix it a little more thoroughly. And what I really want to see is the finished product of both Floetrols to judge the vibrancy. So I'll still be able to do that. And there was a few more sneaky chunks of paint closer to the center, so I'm just going to try to fish those out with some tweezers, which I'm currently looking for. Found them. And hopefully I can pull them out while the canvas is still wet and not ruin the piece. There's nothing worse than when a piece looks gorgeous when it's still wet, and then when it dries, you see a bunch of hunks on the canvas. Just looking at it from different angles, making sure there's no more chunks anywhere. And I spotted another one in this corner. We'll just pull that right out. And that should do it. All the little hunks are gone. It's really too bad I had to pour so much of it off. You can see it almost pulling to the corner there. But that's okay. The other side looks amazing. Now I'm just going to take the torch, make sure there's no tiny little air bubbles. But honestly, with both Floetrols, I have not found a big issue with bubbles at all. It's why it's been one of my favorite pouring mediums. All right, so here it is. It's still wet here. So again, at the end of the video, we will look at all the dried results. But the cells that did survive look so amazing and defined. And the colors look fantastic. I can't wait to see how this dries. All right, so now we are moving on to the second part of the battle of the Floetrols. I'm going to do some line pours. And I've done so many line pours with the US Floetrol, so here is an example. Lines look fantastic, colors are decent, there's a few bubbles. We're going to see if we can do any better with the Aussie Floetrol. I have my base layer. I have 4 colors. I tried to pick similar to the US canvas that I just showed. And I didn't need to add any water. I'm just tapping out the bubbles there. They're very easy to get rid of, so that's good. And all of them are mixed the same way I did with the silicone cell pour, half Floetrol, half acrylic paint. No silicone this time though. We're going to see how the lines turn out. Base layer is poured and ready to go, and we will jump right into the pour. Just going with a nice and simple line pour here, and immediately I am seeing cells. I did not add any silicone oil, and I do not get those cells with the US Floetrol. So that's an interesting little discovery. And my initial plan here was to mimic the US Floetrol canvas that I showed with almost the spiral lines. But soon as I started to spread it, I realized with the cells, a spiral looks messy and not clean. So I'm going to abandon ship on that idea. And instead of a spiral, I'm just going to do a nice simple line pour, one corner at a time. And I spotted a little hunk of paint. I did mix it very well, so at least it's only one this time. There we go. Now I'll just spread it over each corner. And we're going to have a simple little line here, but with the cells, it makes it look pretty interesting. The lines aren't nearly as defined as the US Floetrol, but the cells do add a nice little touch. It's a different look, but I can't say it's better or worse. But again, we'll see how it looks when it's dry. Here we have the fresh pour of the Aussie Floetrol line pour. The lines in this corner look pretty nice and defined, but as it moves up, there's a lot more cells than definition. So it's a different look. But let's see how all of these paintings dried, and I'll give you my final thoughts on the two Floetrols. Here is the dried results. We have the US Floetrol and the Aussie Floetrol, the line pours. We'll take a look at the US Floetrol here. The lines look amazing. They're so defined. The color looks decent. And then moving on to our Aussie Floetrol over here. There's cells even without silicone oil, but the finish is just gorgeous. I love how the colors turned out. So there's our line pours. Let's take a look at the silicone pours. So we have the US Floetrol on the left here and the Aussie on the right. If we take a closer look at the US Floetrol, there's a bit of glare and loss of color vibrancy. The cells look pretty decent, but when you look right next to the Aussie Floetrol, it just looks so much more put together. The cells look fantastic. The colors look great. There's no glare. I absolutely love the Aussie Floetrol for silicone cell pours. So there we have it, a little battle of the Floetrols. Overall, if you're going for a line pour, I would say go with the US Floetrol. You'll get more defined lines. But if you're looking for any kind of cell pour, absolutely, I would go for the Aussie Floetrol. So thank you guys so much for watching. That is all, and I will see you next time. Bye.